What if I told you that the most terrifying monster ever created isn't hiding in the shadows? It isn't lurking under your bed or stalking through abandoned hallways. No, this horror is far more insidious. This monster lives in broad daylight, walking among us, screaming to be seen, but condemned to eternal invisibility. Welcome to the true nightmare of Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man, a horror story that will make you question everything you think you see. The Curse of Invisibility. Picture this. You wake up tomorrow and nobody can see you. Not literally invisible. Worse, people look right through you. They see a shadow, a stereotype, a thing, but never you. You scream, you cry, you beg to be recognized, but their eyes remain empty. You are a ghost in your own life, condemned to watch the world interact with a phantom version of yourself that doesn't exist. This is the living nightmare that Ralph Ellison crafted in 1952, and it's more terrifying than any creature feature because this horror is real. Our unnamed narrator opens his story from a hole in the ground, a tomb of his own making, surrounded by 1,369 light bulbs blazing in desperate defiance against the darkness that society has forced upon him. He's not dead, but he's not quite alive either. He exists in a liminal space between visibility and oblivion, and his story will chill you to your core. I am an invisible man, he declares. Not metaphorically invisible, not occasionally overlooked, systematically, violently, deliberately rendered unseen by the very society he moves through. And here's where the horror deepens. This isn't about being ignored. This is about being actively unseen, having your humanity stripped away by every gaze that falls upon you. Imagine being surrounded by people who look at you but see only their own prejudices, their own fears, their own diseased projections. You become a living haunted house, filled with everyone else's nightmares but your own. The Battle Royal, a blood sport of dehumanization. Let me take you to one of the most viscerally horrifying scenes in American literature, the Battle Royal. Our narrator, young and naive, believes he's been invited to deliver an inspiring speech to the white community leaders of his southern town. He's prepared, he's polished, he's ready to prove his worth. But first, they tell him, there's some entertainment. What unfolds is a waking nightmare that would make any horror director weep with envy. Black teenagers, blindfolded, are forced into a boxing ring to beat each other senseless while drunk white men cheer and jeer from the shadows. They can't see who they're hitting. Brothers are made to destroy brothers in the darkness, all for the amusement of those who orchestrated this degradation. But it gets worse. Before the fight, the young men are forced to watch as a naked blonde woman dances before them, a deliberate trap. Look at her, and you're confirming their racist stereotypes. Look away, and you're disrespecting the white men who put her there. There is no right choice. Every option leads to punishment. This is psychological torture disguised as spectacle. Then comes the electrified rug. After the beating, after the humiliation, gold coins are scattered on a rug. The boys scramble for them, desperate, only to discover the rug is electrified. Their bodies convulse and jerk like puppets on invisible strings as the white men howl with laughter. Even the promise of reward is a weapon, another layer of cruelty. And our narrator, after all this brutality, after being reduced to a piece of entertainment, he's finally allowed to give his speech. Blood dripping from his mouth, he speaks about humility, about patience, about playing by society's rules. The white men barely listen. His reward? A briefcase containing a scholarship, but also the seeds of his eventual destruction. This scene isn't just horror, it's a blueprint of systematic dehumanization. It shows us how society creates monsters not from people, but from the erasure of people. The true terror isn't the violence itself, it's the casual nature of it, the way it's woven into the fabric of civilized society. The letters of betrayal, the monster within. Here's where Ellison gives us a twist worthy of the best horror films. Sometimes the monsters wear familiar faces. Sometimes they look like mentors, like saviors, like your own community. After being expelled from college, punished for the crime of showing truth to those who profit from lies, our narrator heads to New York with hope clutched in his hands. That hope takes the form of sealed letters from Dr. Bledsoe, the college president, a black man in power who promised to help him rebuild his shattered life. For weeks, our narrator walks the streets of New York, delivering these letters to important white businessmen, waiting for the opportunity he's been promised. Door after door closes, faces turn cold. He doesn't understand why, until one man, perhaps out of pity, perhaps out of cruelty, shows him what's actually written in those letters. The truth is more horrifying than any ghost story. The president who should protect students feeds them to the wolves. The system that promises salvation delivers only an endless maze with no exit. You can't fight it because it's everywhere. You can't escape it because the trap was set before you were born. Imagine discovering that every helping hand extended to you was actually pushing you deeper into quicksand, that every mentor was actually an executioner in disguise, that your entire life has been orchestrated by people who smile at you while sharpening their knives. This is the paranoid nightmare that becomes our narrator's reality, and he's only beginning to understand how deep the horror goes.
The paint factory, the factory of erased identities. The paint factory sequence is where Ellison's genius for horror truly shines. Our narrator gets a job at Liberty Paints, a company famous for one product, optic white paint. So white, it's used to paint government monuments. If it's optic white, it's the right white, is their slogan, a phrase that should send shivers down your spine. Here's the secret recipe for this perfect whiteness. You take pure white paint and add exactly 10 drops of a black chemical solution. Stir it in until the blackness disappears completely, creating an even more brilliant white. Add too much black, and the whole batch turns gray, worthless, ruined. Do you see the horror of this metaphor? Black labor, black culture, black humanity, essential to creating America's purity, but only if it remains invisible, controlled, and ultimately consumed by whiteness. The narrator's job is literally to make blackness disappear into white perfection. He's participating in his own erasure. When he makes a mistake and the paint turns gray, his supervisor is horrified. The narrator is sent to the basement, to the very bowels of the factory, where he meets Lucius Brockway, an old black man who keeps the entire factory running, but receives no recognition. Brockway is a ghost in the machine, the invisible foundation upon which the whole empire rests. He's what the narrator will become if he stays, essential but unseen, powerful but powerless, alive but already dead. Then comes the explosion. The boiler erupts in a massive blast that should kill our narrator. Instead, it subjects him to a different kind of death, a grotesque rebirth. He wakes up in the factory hospital, where white doctors perform experiments on him, shocking his brain, trying to erase his memories, his identity, his very sense of self. They're trying to reset him, turn him into a blank slate they can inscribe with whatever purpose suits them. "What is your name?" they ask. He can't remember. "Who are you?" He doesn't know. This is body horror merged with existential terror, the annihilation of self while your body continues breathing. You're alive, but the you that makes you you has been scattered to the winds. The Brotherhood, cult of false salvation. After the explosion, after his psychic dismemberment, our narrator is taken in by Mary, the first person who treats him like an actual human being. But safety feels like stagnation to a man desperate for purpose, and that's when the Brotherhood finds him. Imagine this: you're lost, broken, invisible. Then suddenly a group appears offering everything you've ever wanted: community, purpose, power, visibility. They give you a new name, a new identity, a new mission. They tell you that you matter, that your voice can change the world. After a lifetime of being unseen, someone is finally seeing you. Or are they? The Brotherhood, Ellison's stand-in for the Communist Party, is horror wearing the mask of salvation. They dress our narrator in expensive suits. They make him a public speaker. They give him an audience that hangs on his every word. For the first time in his life, he feels seen. But here's the sinister truth that slowly reveals itself like a body decomposing in time-lapse. The Brotherhood doesn't see him. They see a useful tool, a black face they can parade around to prove their commitment to equality, while simultaneously demanding he suppress everything that makes him black, that makes him individual, that makes him human. Be less personal, they command. Focus on the ideology. Your individual experiences don't matter, only the collective struggle. When his friend Todd Clifton, another black member, is shot dead by police, our narrator expects the Brotherhood to respond with fury, with solidarity, with humanity. Instead, they coldly calculate the political implications. Clifton's death isn't a tragedy, it's an inconvenience to their strategic planning. A human being has been murdered, and they're concerned about optics. This is psychological horror at its finest. The revelation that your rescue is actually another prison, that your saviors are just more sophisticated jailers, that the community you found is actually a cult demanding the sacrifice of your soul. The narrator realizes he traded one form of invisibility for another. At least before, he was ignored. Now he's being actively consumed, digested, transformed into something that serves their purpose while destroying his. And the most terrifying part? He went willingly. He was so desperate to be seen that he walked straight into another trap, this one baited with everything he'd ever wanted. The horror isn't that monsters exist, it's that they know exactly what we're hungry for and use that hunger to devour us.
Everything culminates in the Harlem riot, a sequence of such visceral, chaotic horror that it reads like the apocalypse has come to New York City. The Brotherhood has abandoned the people of Harlem, their political games sparking rage they never intended to manage. The community erupts in violence, and our narrator finds himself in the center of a nightmare where the entire social order collapses. Buildings burn, glass shatters, people run screaming through streets filled with smoke and fury. But this isn't mindless chaos. This is the accumulated pain of generations finally exploding outward. Every window broken is a scream of frustration. Every fire lit is rage made manifest. The horror here isn't the violence itself, it's what the violence represents, the inevitable consequence of making people invisible for too long. Our narrator runs through this hellscape, chased by men he once called brothers, by police, by the pure anarchy he helped create without understanding what he was doing. He's a ghost fleeing other ghosts through a city tearing itself apart. Nothing is real anymore. Everything is masks, lies, manipulations, and violence. Then he falls. literally falls into a manhole, down into darkness, into the underground. He's pursued by men with bats and torches, an image pulled straight from lynch mob nightmares, and he tumbles into a coal cellar, down, down, down into the earth, into the tomb. He could climb out. The manhole is right there, but instead he stays. He chooses the darkness, because at least in the darkness he controls his own invisibility. At least here, underground, isolated from the world, he's invisible on his own terms rather than theirs. This is where we find him at the novel's beginning, hibernating in a hole, illuminated by 1,369 stolen light bulbs. He's stealing electricity from the monopolized light and power company, literally siphoning light from the system that tried to keep him in darkness. It's an act of defiance, of survival, of claiming the one thing they tried to deny him, the right to illuminate his own existence. He's not dead, but he's not living either. He's become what they made him, invisible, but he's done it deliberately, with intention, with control. The horror of recognition. But here's where Ellison delivers his final, most unsettling twist. This isn't just a story about one man's invisibility. This is a mirror held up to show us our own monstrousness. The narrator ends his underground memoir with a question that should haunt you. Who knows but that, on the lower frequencies, I speak for you? Think about that. He's suggesting that his invisibility might be your invisibility. That the horror he's experienced, being seen but not seen, being defined by others, being trapped in identities imposed from outside, might be universal. How many of us are truly seen? How many of us are just playing roles written by others, wearing masks so long we've forgotten our own faces? The real horror of Invisible Man isn't that the narrator is invisible, it's that we are the ones refusing to see. Every time we look at someone and see a category instead of a person, that's the horror. Every time we project our assumptions onto others, that's the monster. Every time we force people into boxes for our own comfort, that's the violence. Ellison is holding up a mirror and asking, are you seeing me right now, or are you seeing what you expect to see? Am I a person to you, or am I just a function? Are you reading this as an individual engaging with another individual, or am I just a voice performing a role you've assigned me? The most terrifying thing about this novel is that it doesn't let us off the hook. We want to be the hero of the story, but Ellison keeps reminding us that we might be the monsters, not because we're cruel, but because we're comfortable with systems that render people invisible, not because we're evil, but because we're complicit. The choice to emerge. The novel ends with our narrator contemplating emergence. After all the horror, all the betrayal, all the violence, he's considering coming back up to the surface, not because the world has changed, but because staying underground forever is its own kind of death. This is the final horror. There is no escape. The underground is safe, but suffocating. The surface is dangerous, but alive. Neither option is good. Both are terrible in different ways. The narrator must choose between two forms of dying, the slow death of isolation or the violent death of visibility. But there's something else in his words as he considers this choice, something that might be hope, or might be delusion, or might be both. He's been writing this entire confession, this sprawling narrative of his destruction and survival. By telling his story, he's creating himself. He's no longer letting others define him. He's defining himself through his own words, his own testimony, his own truth. The act of writing becomes an act of resistance. If they can't see him, he'll make himself visible through language. If they won't recognize him, he'll recognize himself. If they keep trying to erase him, he'll keep writing himself back into existence. Is this horror or hope? Is it tragedy or triumph? Ellison leaves us in that ambiguous space, that liminal zone between darkness and light, between invisibility and recognition, between death and life.
Conclusion: why this horror endures. Ralph Ellison created something that transcends typical horror. He created a mirror that reflects the monsters we've become without realizing it. Invisible Man is terrifying because it's true, because it's happening right now, today, in 2026, just as it was in 1952. We live in a world of increasing visibility. Social media, surveillance, constant documentation, yet people remain invisible in the ways that matter. We see profiles, not persons. We see categories, not complexities. We see what we expect to see, what we're comfortable seeing, what confirms our existing beliefs. The horror of invisibility isn't about being unseen by eyes. It's about being unseen by hearts, by minds, by the moral imagination that recognizes the full humanity in others. It's about living in a society that has perfected the art of looking directly at people while seeing right through them. This is why Invisible Man remains one of the most important, most disturbing, most necessary works of American literature. It's a horror story that won't let us sleep peacefully. It won't let us comfort ourselves with the belief that we're good people in a flawed world. It insists that we examine our own complicity in systems of invisibility. Every time you make an assumption about someone based on their appearance, that's the horror living on. Every time you see a category instead of a person, that's the monster feeding. Every time you're comfortable with someone else's invisibility, that's the nightmare continuing. Ellison's masterpiece asks us to do the hardest thing imaginable, to truly see each other, not to look at, but to see, to recognize the complex, contradictory, struggling humanity in every person we encounter, to resist the comfortable lies that let us sort people into simple categories. The most terrifying question Invisible Man poses isn't answered in its pages. It's posed to you right now. Who are you making invisible? Who are you refusing to see? And what will you do about it? The narrator sits in his illuminated hole, surrounded by blazing light in the darkness, writing his truth, while the world above continues its dance of mutual invisibility. He's a ghost haunting his own life, a man who exists but doesn't exist, visible but unseen. And here's the final twist that should keep you up at night. He's not alone down there. We're all in our own versions of that underground room, stealing light from systems that want us to keep us in darkness, trying desperately to illuminate ourselves in ways that matter, hoping someone, anyone, will finally, truly see us. Ralph Ellison didn't write a novel. He created a haunted house we all live in, a horror we're all experiencing, a nightmare we're all trapped in together. The only question is whether we'll keep sleepwalking through it, or whether we'll wake up and start seeing each other for real. because that's the ultimate horror. We have the power to end the invisibility, but we keep choosing not to use it. The lights are blazing, the truth is written, the question remains, are you willing to see? If this exploration of literary horror opened your eyes to the terrors hiding in plain sight, smash that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the darkness within great literature. Drop a comment below. Who in your life have you made invisible without realizing it? Let's start seeing each other. The nightmare only ends when we choose to wake up.